what's crazy is that like I think about it now in retrospect, and it's like it's crazy how large the perceived monsters can appear. And Layla has this quote that I love, but it's fear is a mile wide and an inch deep. And so you look at it and it looks like this ocean. And then you take the first step and you realize you don't drown because it's like, oh, there's ground underneath of this, right? There's other people who are more on my path. And the friends you lose, you gain new friends, right? And so that fear was the hardest decision that I've had to overcome in my entrepreneurial career. And I think of all the split paths in my life, that was the one that if I had many timelines or many universes that existed, that was probably the one that is the most likely that I would not have parted from. So I think in like 90% of universes that Alex Hormozi exists, I'm just a consultant somewhere. And so I would encourage you, if you do feel that, you're not going to die. Like you won't die and you might just live.
It's so interesting because I think everything you've said is just absolutely spot on. But you're right in where you say that if you'd asked an audience member listening now
Yeah.
why they haven't started yet, they wouldn't say fear.
Yeah.
They would say, I haven't got the X, I haven't got the Y. But actually, it is such an emotional thing. And we don't talk about that enough because uncertainty is, humans seem to be allergic to uncertainty and they'd rather the certain misery of their current situation typically than uncertainty.
And I think, and I used what I consider a very non-palatable word of coward purposefully because no one wants to say they're afraid because if you say you're afraid, then it means you're a coward. And I think that it only means you're a coward if you allow that fear to change your behavior in an aversive way, as in it not towards what you want. And so, the inverse of that, many people have heard it, courage is not acting without fear, but despite fear. And I think that when you allow fear to change your behavior the wrong way, that is when you can give yourself that title of coward. And I think that that is a title that I have feared my whole life. And that label is I'm more afraid of that label than the label of failure. I'd rather be a failure than a coward.
Is there a framework for knowing when to quit?
So I think there's like the math behind it. And the math I think is pretty straightforward. So like, when do you quit your business? You've saved up 3 to 6 months of personal savings, number one. Number two is that you have started something because nowadays in the digital age, you can begin a business on the side that can generate income. And that income in the small amount of time that you're not working replaces or at least matches the existing income you have from your current job. And you've been able to do that or demonstrate that income for like 3 to 6 months. If you do that, that's a very like math way of approaching it. That also is basically never the reason that people aren't quitting their job, right? Like that's a really like I have backlog. I've matched my current income with my part-time work, and if I just put my full-time work, I would probably make more. Very reasonable, but never actually the reason that people don't do it.
I was thinking about the two sort of reasons why someone might quit something or feel like they want to quit. And one of them is clearly because it's hard. And that's obviously not reason enough to quit. And then there's another one which you were speaking to there, which is it's not moving me towards a meaningful goal, irrespective of how hard it is. Like a marathon, you're raising money for a charity you care about. It's hard, but you don't quit.
Yeah.
And then there's maybe if you're running a marathon for no apparent reason, there was no charity, there was no one watching, there was no like fitness benefit, then that's a good, I guess, moment to consider quitting. My story mimics yours in a way that I didn't realize. I didn't realize you went through a similar thing in terms of the parents' disownership.
Yeah.
No real great option to flee to, but feeling like the current path that would have led me to be, I don't know, a business management student was significantly worse on balance than taking the risk. But I think maybe a point of distinction is I was so naive that it didn't feel like a risk.
Yeah. So what's really interesting about that is the guarantee. And so a lot of times we don't look at what I call the don't, which is like the alternate path. And so if I had played out my existing path, I had a guarantee of outcome I didn't want. It was just at a delay. Whereas here, there's a chance that I can make it. And so one of the final kind of frameworks for making the decision was guarantee bad, chance at good. And I was like, well, I might as well take a chance. And